Alrighty, guys. Peacemaker Season 2, Episode number 3. Let's talk about it on today's episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod. This is going to be a full spoiler discussion for Episode 3 of the second season of the DCU show, Peacemaker from James Gunn, starring John Cena. So if you haven't seen Episode 3, no worries. Just make sure to save this segment, save the podcast, save this episode, wherever you are watching it for later, or just skip ahead if you're listening to the full podcast, as we will be diving into full spoilers for Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 3. Let's get into it. So, as we head into Peacemaker Episode 3, what I said about the first couple episodes, just to recap in case you haven't checked out my spoiler discussion for those two episodes, which I did last week, I'm enjoying the show, and I really do think, I say it all the time, but I think that Peacemaker is the medium, is the tone, the style, and everything that James Gunn thrives in. And not saying that it always works for me, but I think that when I watched Peacemaker as a show, I think to myself, this is really what James Gunn, it looks like this is what he wants to be doing. And he said as much. He said that Peacemaker is really his favorite thing that he's ever done. And you can tell. I mean, it's sort of that mix of humor and violence and heart and rock music and soundtracks and all that jazz that, make up what a James Gunn project is. And not saying that Guardians of the Galaxy or Superman or the Suicide Squad are not. I mean, you can definitely see James Gunn in those projects, but you can really see him in Peacemaker. And I think the first two episodes of Season 2 I enjoyed. I thought that they were a good setup for what was to come. I think that, Tim Meadows' character was not likable, but he's funny. And then you have other things being set up like the unfolding pocket, not pocket dimension, but the unfolding tunnel, quantum unfolding tunnel, and him seeing his other life in that other universe, him killing his alternate self, him trying to, work things out with Harcourt, which plays a much bigger role in this episode, which is going to probably be a pretty big part of the season for the rest of the episodes that we have to look forward to. So a lot of things that were being set up. And I said that, Peacemaker Season 2, I'm pretty sure is 8 episodes. So episodes 1 and 2, if you're talking about 25% of the way through, you're thinking about the first, 30-ish minutes of a movie. And in the first 30 or so minutes, you're not expecting to get groundbreaking reveals or big plot twists or anything. You're just trying to get acclimated to the setting, the stories, the characters, and whatnot, especially a sequel, right? You're trying to get reacclimated to the characters and all that good stuff. So I think that that's what the first two episodes were doing. But I was very curious then. I'm always curious to see, okay, then where does the next set of episodes take us? The episodes that lead us to the halfway point. Because that's when the story really starts to build. And I think that to James Gunn's credit, this episode 3, is starting to hint at what this story could, starting to really shape what the story is going to be. I think that there are some things in here that seem more straightforward than they are. I think something is amiss, and I think there's a lot of things that are being very cleverly kept under the surface of all the craziness that went on in episode 3, but we can talk about that towards the end of the segment. So first of all, let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way. Rick Flag Jr. is back in the DCU, or rather a parallel dimension to the DCU, I suppose. Joel Kinnaman returns as Rick Flag Jr. Now, what's interesting is that in the prologue to Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 3, they show a flashback to 3 years earlier, where Amelia Harcourt and Rick Flag Jr. are together. And are together in some capacity, whether or not they're actually dating, or whether or not they were just, together, for lack of a better term, for a night. I don't know. But they were together at some point 3 years before, right before the events of the Suicide Squad, which we've established, James Gunn has established, is mostly canon to the DCU, just because of the fact that he said, everything you see in Peacemaker Season 2 in the DCU that refers to or shows events from the DCEU, aka the Suicide Squad, is canon to the DCU. And you go, okay, that makes sense. So Amelia Harcourt refers to Corto Maltese. She says, you got to ship out to Corto Maltese. That is the Suicide Squad. So she was with him right before he died. And that is that. The big question, before we get to the other big thing that they kind of did here, I think it's kind of a big deal, but kind of not a big deal. But anyway, we'll talk about that in just a second. But the real big question that I have here is this flashback taking place in the alternate dimension or in the DCU proper? I'm sure this is a question that will absolutely get revealed later on, right? I think that because this show, or this season rather, is taking so much time to revolve around Chris Smith and Harcourt's relationship, it will absolutely be revealed whether or not Harcourt used to date Rick Flag Jr. in the original timeline. In fact, I'm sure that's probably going to be a source of big conflict for the Amelia Harcourt in the quote-unquote regular DCU. So I'm sure it's going to be answered. It's just a question that I had of, okay, where is this taking place? The other big thing that they do here is sort of canonize Suicide Squad, 2016's Suicide Squad. Kind of, but not really, because did you catch it? Rick Flag Jr. makes mention to none other than June Moon, aka Enchantress, which it's been a while, admittedly, maybe not as long as some of you guys, because I did a recent rewatch of Suicide Squad less than a year ago, so I've seen it somewhat recently, but still, it's been a while, and I had to look it up as the episode was going on. What happened to June Moon at the end of Suicide Squad? And I remember they killed Enchantress, allegedly, although this version of Rick Flag seems to indicate she still has some Enchantress powers because she can blow a hole through the earth, so there's that. But June Moon survives. So, in a very odd way, this episode of Peacemaker Season 2 not only continues to canonize most of the Suicide Squad, it also canonizes... Is that even a word, canonize? I don't even know. Anyways, canonizes 2016 Suicide Squad. At least a tiny chunk of it. The fact that Rick Flag Jr. was with June Moon. Because, I mean, even 2021's The Suicide Squad wanted almost nothing to do with that original Suicide Squad film, other than bringing over characters like Amanda Waller, and Rick Flag Jr. and Harley Quinn. So I think it's interesting. I mean, perhaps it's much ado about nothing, but I think it is an interesting detail that James Gunn absolutely did not need to include. Maybe it's going to become an important plot point. It looks like Rick Flag Jr. and Harcourt are having kind of an affair, or there's some ambiguity with the language there, but maybe that's going to be a plot point. So anyways, that is that. We talked a lot about the prologue, though, so let's get into the meat of the episode. The episode mostly takes place, it intercuts between the main universe where our other characters are supporting characters like Adebayo and Harcourt, Vigilante, and Economos are just talking through things, basically, and kind of hinting towards the fact that what happened on the boat a couple weeks ago, which I'm sure will be pretty much the focus of one of these episodes. If I had to guess what happened on the boat, I would say... not guessing exactly what happens on the boat, but rather what episode it gets referred to. I would say episode 5. I would say episode 5 is going to have an extended flashback sequence to what happens on the boat. My guess, though, is it's just a guess. But really, the brunt of the episode takes place in this alternate universe. And I think, look, I've said it before, multiverse and multiverse shenanigans, fish out of water, it's tried and true, and it's been done so many times before, especially in comic book movies and shows, and even the fish out of water, kind of like Thor and the first Thor, for example. I will say, concepts might be tried and true. Execution, pretty good. I think it's cool to see Chris Smith really being taken to as a hero. And I think that it's really cool to see Jennifer Holland playing a much lighter, different version of Harcourt. I think that in some universes, you're like, you guys are all the same, pretty much. And in some movies that deal with the multiverse, it's like, you guys are all the same, pretty much. I think almost every Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was the same, except for the one that went kind of crazy from the incursions. But I think that, if you're going to do a multiverse kind of story, this is about as good of a way as you could do it, I think. Where I think that you really want to play into the emotions of him, seeing what he could have and maybe wanting to leave his friends behind. Again, none of these things are particularly new concepts about, I found my new family and, what was that? It even happened in Guardians a little bit, in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, where Peter Quill's like, oh, Ego's my family. And Gamora's like, I thought you already found your family. I'm sure that that's going to be a theme here going forward. It just kind of has to be, with the way that this story is being set up, but I think it's cool, and I think that you do see character growth from this version of Peacemaker, and he's telling Harcourt, look, I've changed. I'm trying to get rid of the arrogant bits of myself. I really have changed. Juxtaposed by the fact that he goes into that building, the DMV, I think, and just the Sons of Liberty just completely wrecks them and destroys them and is merciless towards them. And it's interesting, right? This is what I was talking about towards the beginning of the segment, where there are still things that are underlying here that need to be resolved and need to be explained, because the fact that he just goes in and brutally kills them, and people seem taken aback by what he's doing, because Peacemaker is a celebrity in this dimension, makes me wonder, because I think what really needs to be revealed about this show, or about this season in the remaining episodes, is what the old Peacemaker really was like and how he's different from this version of Peacemaker, the one that we've come to know. I think it's interesting. Maybe this version of Peacemaker didn't really kill people. Maybe. Or I don't know, but I think that there's something different here that people are just not seeing yet that will probably out this Chris Smith as a fake Peacemaker. We'll see. I also really like the scene, of course, at the end where he and his brother are having a moment together. David Denman and John Cena, they do a great job in that scene. John Cena just really bringing out the emotion of the character, and we get the setup to, I guess, another attack on Peacemaker's house. It feels like Peacemaker's house is becoming a very central location in this movie. I suppose that makes sense because that's where the unfolding tunnel is, but still, almost feels like a redo of what they did in episode 2. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Michael Rooker's back also as an eagle hunter, so that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, that's setting up next episode. So I enjoyed this episode as well. I'm intrigued. I was entertained by a lot of the stuff. I think the bird blindness joke is still really funny. I don't know. It's been 2 episodes, but it's still funny to me. Not all of it lands perfectly. Not all the jokes, land in general for Peacemaker Season 2, but it's a James Gunn project, and I don't expect every single joke to land. To be quite honest with you, I don't think his humor completely jives with me all the time, but it's funny. Like, again, the bird blindness joke is still pretty funny to me. So we'll see. The next episode is going to be definitely starting out with the assault on Peacemaker's home, and then we will see where we go from there. Guys, what did you think of Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 3? Is this your favorite episode, least favorite episode thus far? What are you looking forward to in next week's episode? Let me know in the comments down below.